An overview of Ethiopia-Egypt, foreign relations, 1990-present. Africa, source of life, culture, and conflict. At its heart lies the complex relationship between two nations, Ethiopia, the source of 85% of the Nile's water, and Egypt, a country whose survival depends on it. From 1990 to the present day, this relationship has been marked by cooperation, tension, and a shared struggle for sovereignty and survival. The Nile River has been a lifeline for the people of Northeast. Segment 1, the 1990s, a new era of challenges. In the 1990s, both Ethiopia and Egypt faced significant transformations. Ethiopia, recovering from years of civil war, began rebuilding its economy and infrastructure under a new government. Meanwhile, Egypt, under President Hosni Mubarak, focused on maintaining its dominance over the Nile and protecting its water interests. The 1959 Nile Waters Agreement, which granted Egypt and Sudan the majority of the river's flow, continued to fuel resentment in Ethiopia.
Interest. 1959 agreement does not recognize the interest of 7 of the 9 countries. It recognizes the interest of 2 countries. And so long as you insist that only the interest of the 2 countries matter, then you are closing the door for cooperation. The first step for cooperation is recognition of each other's interest and recognition of the need of a win-win solution. That is what we are lacking now.
For Ethiopia, it was a colonial-era injustice. For Egypt, it was a guarantee of survival. Ethiopia's stance in the 1990s was clear. It would not be bound by agreements it never signed. The Nile was a resource Ethiopia needed for development, especially after decades of stagnation. From Egypt's perspective, any disruption to the flow of the Nile was a direct threat to its people and economy. Maintaining the status quo was non-negotiable. Segment 2, the 2000s, rising development and growing tensions. As Ethiopia embarked on ambitious development projects, including the construction of dams for hydropower, tensions with Egypt began to rise. Ethiopia's participation in the Nile Basin Initiative, a regional platform for cooperation, showed its willingness to engage in dialogue. However, Egypt's insistence on historical agreements often stalled progress. Egypt accused Ethiopia of threatening its water security, while Ethiopia argued it had been sidelined for too long. The seeds of future disputes were being sown. Segment 3, the 2010s, the GERD and escalation. In 2011, Ethiopia made a bold move, launching the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam GERD on the Blue Nile. The GERD, envisioned as Africa's largest hydropower project, became a symbol of Ethiopia's ambition to transform its economy and reclaim control over its resources. The GERD is not just a project, it is a matter of national pride and survival. It will lift millions of Ethiopians out of poverty.
መላው የዓለም ሕዝብ እንዲገነዘብ የሚያስፈልገው ይኸው እንደምታዩት ኃይል እያመነጨ ቀደም ሲል የሚያደርገውን ተግባር በመፈጸም ወደ ሱዳንና ወደ ግብጽ የሚሄድ እንጂ ባሉባልታ ሲነገር እንደነበረው የኢትዮጵያ ሕዝብ እና መንግስት ውሃውን ገድበው የወንድም ግብጽንና የሱዳን ሕዝብን የማስራብ ፍላጎት የማስጠማት ፍላጎት እንደሌላቸው ስንናገር የነበረውን ዛሬ በተግባር ያሳየንበት ቀን ስለሆነ የኢትዮጵያ ዋነኛው ፍላጎት 60% በጨለማ የሚሰቃየውን ሕዝብ አምፖል አይቶ የማያውቁ እናቶች በጀርባቸው እንጨት ተሸክመው ኢነርጂ ለማምረት የሚጥሩ እናቶችን ጉልበት ለመከላከልና አሁን ካለንበት ደህንነት ለመገላገል ብቻ ያለመ ፍላጎት ይህም ሲሆን ደግሞ የወንድሞቻችንን ጥቅም በጠበቀና በትብብር መንፈስ መሆኑን ተገንዝባ
But for Egypt, the GERD represented a potential existential threat. Fearing reduced water flow, Egypt sought international intervention, including mediation by the United States and the African Union. Egypt, we will not allow our water rights to be compromised. The Nile is a matter of life and death for. Segment 4, the 2020s, stalemate and hope for resolution. In the 2020s, the GERD became operational, marking a major milestone for Ethiopia, the filling of the dam's reservoir. Despite objections from Egypt and Sudan, further escalated tensions. Yet, both nations avoided open conflict, engaging in rounds of negotiations mediated by the African Union. The African Union emphasized African solutions to African problems, but a legally binding agreement remains elusive. Ethiopia insists on its right to develop, while Egypt continues to fight for guaranteed water flow. The Garrett is a triumph of resilience. For Ethiopia, declaration that no nation can dictate its future. Egypt's concerns are valid. Without the Nile, Egypt cannot survive. This is a matter of human security, not just politics. Segment 5. To nations, one river. Despite decades of tension, the Nile unites more than it divides. Both Ethiopia and Egypt rely on the river not just for survival, but for hope. While the Nile sustains life in one of the world's driest regions, the Garrett has the potential to power East Africa.